Friedrich, if David Miscavige were to go to prison for any reason, do you think he has a strong enough understanding of brainwashing to have some of the other inmates work as security detail for him and some to clean his cell and maybe others to get chow for him? No, not at all. First off, let's be clear. David Miscavige would very likely end up in prison for white-collar crime versus, fraud and, the financial entanglements and corporate stuff. He might get busted for assault and battery or some kind of violent criminal activity, but probably it's going to be more the white-collar stuff. So he's not going to end up in a federal penitentiary or, county where, not county, but state jail, where, bad things happen to people. I've read a lot about prison. It's just something I've been kind of fascinated by. I don't know why, it just kind of is. And so there's a site called Quora where people throw up answers and questions all the time. I put a lot of answers up there. But I get, when I see questions come through about prison, I'm always like, oh, let me take a look at that. So I've always been kind of interested in what really happens, not what's on TV. Screw TV, screw the movies. They very rarely are what you see in the entertainment media at all an accurate reflection of what really goes on. So if David Miscavige ended up in jail, which we all want, it's probably going to be white-collar, Bernie Madoff type prison, right? And that's kind of club-fed versus, the hardcore, chain gang type of activity. That ain't where David Miscavige is going. So things are pretty chill in a white-collar crime, prison anyway. There's not a lot of weird, people aren't beating up on each other, and there's not a lot of weird stuff going on. So, and David, but to get to the root of your question, now that I've said all of that, David Miscavige is so afraid of going to prison and what would happen to him there from his own ideas about it, that I don't think he would ever go to prison. I think that if push came to shove and David Miscavige was actually incarcerated and facing actual jail time and his lawyers couldn't get him out of it, couldn't get him bailed or couldn't get him out of that situation, which they probably would, but if they couldn't, I think he'd probably kill himself. And I think that if he could get bail or could get out of that situation in any way, I think he'd run. I do not think that he would for 1 second even contemplate spending any real time in jail. I think he would do anything and everything to avoid it. And that's where I think his head's at on that. So he is not a criminal mastermind who understands the psychology of people and really gets how the brain works. He really is clueless about that stuff, okay? I don't think he has read of anything other than Scientology. I don't think he's read, any real psychology or sociology books or really gotten into a deep understanding of how to influence other people. I think he has just learned very, very bad habits and ideas from L. Ron Hubbard, from his time working under Hubbard, and his own kind of megalomania, narcissistic nature, that he just gets away with so much, and people keep letting him get away with stuff, so he keeps pushing it to the point now where you cannot defy him in any way. And he's set up his whole little world. But the world is not, the world he set up, remember that it's not set up around his writings and his work. It's L. Ron Hubbard's work and L. Ron Hubbard's writings that David Miscavige is getting a free ride on. If it was up to him, he wouldn't know how to write that stuff. He wouldn't know how to tell people how to live their lives better and get along with each other better and have ARC and break down communication formulas and ARC triangles and emotional tone scales and all this other rigmarole. He's not the kind of guy who figures that stuff out. And he's not good at it. He's good at the marketing and promotion and keeping people going side. And he's good at terrorizing people and absolutely, getting them in a state of mind where they would, rather, I don't know, where they're very compliant. Let's just put it that way. So that's what he's good at. That's where his skill set lies. And I don't think those skills transfer to prison so well because he's a little tiny man. And when he shows up in prison, if he did show up in a prison where there were violent offenders and he was in the same room as them, he'd be dead. He might, be fairly strong for his size, and he might even have some training, but he's a tiny little guy. He's got nothing on anybody, and yeah, body weight and size matter. In an actual fight, those things actually matter. So he would not be in a very good way in that situation at all.